Hello, book club, real food, real stories. Thank you for reading The Third Plate. I'm incredibly excited when book clubs tell me that they've taken it on and that they have enjoyed it and that they have questions to ask. So thank you for allowing me a brief moment to respond to these questions. I'm sorry it's so brief, but I got caught up today and now we have a busy dinner service, so I'm rushing to get changed and get into the kitchen. So I'm only going to answer a few of these, but the first question I think is the I don't know who asked this, but or maybe it's by the group, but it's the best question. Addressing the enormous demand for food required to feed our growing population while reducing the strain we're putting on the environment seems to be objectives that are at cross purposes or at odds with each other. Are there solutions that could address both at the same time while being truly scalable and cost effective? So the question is, how can we feed a growing population but also put less of a strain on our natural resources? And to me, it's sort of that's the essence of sort of defining a third plate, which is how can we eat a plate of food, a meal, a pattern of eating over the course of a lifetime, a diet for a community, for a family, for a community, for a nation, that responds to the ecological challenges that we're facing regionally, locally, but also responds to it deliciously. And my conceit or whatever about this in this book, and it's really the late inning revelation in writing the book, is that it's not at odds. This is not across purposes. We can both disrupt natural ecologies, ecosystems, environments, and do it lovingly, thoughtfully, and even disrupt it, because agriculture is a disruption of a natural system or a natural environment. But you can disrupt that system thoughtfully and not just require resources from the environment, but you can add resiliency to an environment. You can improve an environment, and that is something that as I said, was at odds with my thinking, but is not at odds with the idea of feeding a growing population. Because as we think about feeding a growing population, with good nutrition and more democratically, and do it with great flavor, which I think is essential, and why I wrote the book was about flavor, because we often ignore flavor, or we think that flavor is at cross purposes with everything I just mentioned, and it's not. It's one and the same thing. I believe there's ways to develop agricultural strategies, farming strategies, ecological planning that will not only require less of the resources of an environment, but can actually improve the resource environment. And that's what I learned in my journey around the world. And what I talk about in the book is these farmers who are out actually to create truly sustainable farms. But truly sustainable farms, it means that they are creating farms and landscapes that are improving with age from generation to generation. What that requires, though, is a diet that responds to that environment, and that's key. Because if we don't have an eating culture, a diet, a cuisine that props that culture, that enables that the ecological decisions to continue, then at some point it's going to break down, and you could be the most thoughtful and concerned farmer, but if you don't have a public that is drinking the Kool-Aid and literally eating the right kind of rotations to prop up the right kind of farming decisions that create this healthy environment, then we are cooked. And so the call of the third plate is to say, we need to learn more about what is it that our region produces and produces well. What is it about our ecological niche that makes a particular region thrive with certain grains and vegetables, and meats too. I mean, animals is definitely a part of many, if not most, ecologies. And if we eat them correctly, if we manage them correctly, and if we put them in the right percentages on our plate, I think they can be beneficial to an environment. So can grains, so can vegetables, but they need to be in the right proportion. And the third plate is a call to what proportion makes sense. Right now, we know that an 8-ounce piece of protein in the center of a plate is the wrong way to respond to the challenges of the future, because the carrying capacity of the world just doesn't allow it. So we have to take our Western conception of a plate of food and turn it on its head, for sure. But I don't think that means ignoring meats, especially where I'm standing. I'm surrounded by land and ecological conditions that necessitate, I think, animal husbandry. Done right and eaten in the right proportion, I think it can not only disturb a natural environment, but improve it. So that's the call of the book. I just want to see if there's any. I'm so glad that was the first question, because I think that sort of encapsulates the whole thing. There's the question about how do we move, how do we scale it up, how do we scale up this whole movement? But scaling it up, I bristle at the term only because it suggests that we need to think about what we need to think about first before scaling up is getting it right. How do we respond to regional ecologies, and how do we create diets and patterns of eating that are truly responsive to those environments? And scaling up, I don't know that scaling up is a national effort. I think it's a regional, hyper-regional effort. I think we should think about cuisines and patterns of eating that are hyper-local and hyper-regional, that respond to those challenges, but do it in the most thoughtful regional, local context. And that means that we're probably looking at cuisines and patterns of eating that are incredibly diverse. We're probably talking about hundreds of cuisines and hundreds of. There is no American diet. There is local diets that respond to these challenges, and that's again what the third plate is. It isn't a call to scale up on a nationwide effort. It's a call to effort to understand, advertise, and promote what is brilliant about a local environment. And when we get that right, when we learn what that is from our farmers, then our responsibility is to create diets and patterns of eating that prop that up. And as a chef, I think that's my calling and my future, and that's what I'm going to go do right now, tonight, and I'll be applauding you for all of your hard work reading my book, and thank you for the support.